Hey hermits. Hey Rosalie. So I have been feeling this itch to reorganize my bookshelves, and I'm kind of kicking myself because I just did a bookshelf tour and I was like, I love how my books are looking. Like, I love, because I've got a color blocked thing going on. I'll show you in a sec. I love how that's looking. Like, aesthetically, it's really pleasing. However, what I'm finding is that it's not the most functional for me right now. So because all of my non-fiction and like spiritual and personal development books are in my office, I've noticed that I'm not grabbing them because I do the bulk of my reading in this room or in my bedroom. I'm just not gravitating to the books that are not on these shelves. So I want to try and bring a lot of those books in here and have them on these shelves too. That will mean I need to unhaul some, just purely from a space perspective. But actually, Tom and I went for a dog walk this morning and we were talking about maybe doing a car boot sale this weekend. So it's a great opportunity for me to just go through my books and get clear on the ones I want to keep and the ones that I'm happy to let fly free into the world and be enjoyed by somebody else. So I am going to make a start with this. I'm going to give you a little look at my like before shelves before I start taking everything off, but then I'm going to kind of like hustle to get everything down because in under an hour I have a call that I have to jump on for work. So I'm going to try and get this phase done right now, and then we'll see where we can fit in pockets of like sorting and reshelving throughout the next day or so. I don't anticipate being able to get it all done today because I've got a pretty jammed day, but we'll see how we go. Okay, ready? Let's do this. Okay, here are the shelves as they currently stand. And like I said, I really love the look. I love the vibe. I love that I've got things organized by color, but it's not rainbow. It's like color blocking. That feels really like striking and aesthetically pleasing for me. I like that I have plants on here and artwork on here. I would love to maybe have more plants. I'm not sure how likely that is with the additional books that I'll be bringing in. But as of right now, we have these bottom two shelves are all unread fiction and memoirs. And then this top shelf is all of the books that I've read, fiction and memoirs. Like I said, the bulk of my non-fiction, all of my like workbooks, all of my like health books, cookbooks, personal development, all of that stuff are in my office, and I want to bring some more of those in here. But as you can see, there's not an awful lot of space there for more books. So yeah, this is going to be interesting. Okay, so let's please ignore all dog hair on the carpet and just pay attention to the books. So many books. All of the books. So, right, I'm not going to get overwhelmed. What I am going to do is start sorting things into genre and making piles of those because I know that that's kind of how I want to be organizing my shelves now. Um, that seems like the logical place to start. And I'm also going to go grab myself another duster because some of these bad boys, the ones that have been living in my office, are dusty as fuck. Like, I haven't touched them in so long. Like, some of them are just dusty. So that's the next job. Okay, so I have gone through that giant mountain of books, or should I say the sea of books that was spreading throughout this room, and sorted them into like loose genres. I'm definitely going to play around with this some more because I noticed myself like questioning myself as I was putting them into the piles. Like, for example, historical fiction. Where are we counting like the beginning and the end of history? Because like technically the 80s are history, but do novels set in the 80s have that historical edge, or would you count them as more contemporary? I don't know. And then there's the whole like, is it a romance or is it a contemporary, or like, is it literary fiction? Like, where are those lines? So I think I'm just going to have to make up my own library system, to be quite honest, because I'm not going to obsess over getting it right. That's dumb. But I managed to get everything sorted and off the floor before my call. So all of this part that you've seen so far took me about 40 minutes, maybe a little bit less. So I am a tiny bit out of breath, but I'm really happy with the progress so far. And then I can come in as I have breaks and maybe at some point tomorrow and just like have a little bit more of a thorough sort through. I haven't gone through and like unhauled anything or taken anything off yet. I just wanted to see how many books were actually on there. Clearly too many to actually live here permanently, so we are going to be doing some unhauling. Also, Plain Bad Heroines. I could not decide where this one goes, so if you have read it, just comment below, give me a genre for it so I know where to put it. For now, she's just going right there in the middle with her cover facing out because she's stunning, but defies category, so yeah. Anyway, I'm going to go jump on my call and I will check in with you and update you on the rest of the progress later. Hey hermits, so yesterday ended up being way more of an intense day than expected, so I actually didn't get back into here all day long. But here I am now, so it's the day after I filmed the last clip, and what I'm going to do is simply spend the next couple of hours, however long it takes, just casually going through each genre, sorting through them, like getting rid of anything that I've read and won't read again, any DNFs, anything that I read the back of and just think, like I don't really fancy reading this anymore, like maybe I was in a different place when I bought it, or like for some other reason I'm just not drawn to it. There are also quite a lot of books on these shelves that I've had for years, and never particularly wanted to read. Like I've reached for them, read the blurb, and then just been like, and gone for something else. Because the reality is, I currently own more books than I will ever read in a lifetime, if we're counting all of my audio books, all of my Kindle books, all of my physical books. Like, there are just so many books that I own, and I'm under no delusions I'm going to stop buying books. Like, I will continue to add to the collection. So if it's not something that I have like this real true desire to immerse myself in, I'm just going to let it go. And I know that that is going to be so difficult, it's going to be painful. These are like family members right here, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to try and do it. I'm really going to try and do it. I'm going to see how many I can unhaul, just to clear a little bit of space and get the faves on here with plenty of breathing room, so that I can, you know, buy more and add more to the shelves, if we're being brutally honest. You can tell by the pace of my speaking that I'm a little bit nervous about this, because it's not a small job, guys, not a small job. I'm not going to make you sit through and watch me in real time, so I think I'm going to do like a little time-lapse situation of me sorting through everything while, I don't know, listening to music, or maybe probably watching booktube videos on my iPad while I go. I don't want this to feel like a really intense blob of hard work. I want it to feel leisurely and enjoyable, so I'm just going to take it at a nice pace. and I'll come back afterwards and just share, number one, the things I'm unhauling, and number two, the finished collection, before I start actually being one of those people who does like artful things on the shelf, because I feel like I really want to do something a little bit aesthetically pleasing, a little bit picturesque, but the first job really is to weed down the books. I probably talked about this as much as I possibly can at this point, so I'm just going to have to go and get started. So I'm going to go and get started. Hi friends! So I have finished going through all my genres, and I have a big pile of undecideds. I am going to be honest with you. Don't know what I'm doing with these bad boys yet. I'll talk through them with you, and maybe like just speaking out loud will help me out. But basically what I've done, I actually ran out of memory while I was filming, but I went through all of the genres, pulled out things that I wanted to release back into the wild, and then put everything back on my shelves just to see how we were doing with fit. They're not in the order that they're going to stay in. Absolutely not. It looks so ugly right now, but everything fits. So this is where we are. Causing chaos with the camera there. Not including this pile that is currently unknown. What I might do is show you the unhauls first. Let's talk about the things that I'm definitely gonna get rid of. So just get them over here now. And when I get rid of books, it's not typically because I don't like them. It's not that they're terrible books or anything like that. It might just be I've read it, I enjoyed it, and I know I won't reread it. Like, I don't reread everything. I do reread some things, but a lot of things I'm happy to have the memories of that first enjoyable time that I read it. There are some that I'll read or I'll read a couple of chapters off, and I'm like, I need you to get out of my house. Like, I can't have you in my space. But I don't think there are any of those books in this pile, so we're good. Anyway, the first book that I'm going to be unhauling is The Winter Witch by Paula Braxton. If you like witchy fiction, Paula Braxton is great. I listened to the Audible version of The Witch's Daughter, which is a book by her, and loved it. I'd probably actually listen to that one again. This one I enjoyed, but I don't see myself reading it again. I also did not realise at the time that it's actually the second in a series, which kind of bums me out. Because it doesn't say it really anywhere on the blurb or anywhere else. The only way I figured it out was literally from that little icon there that I didn't even notice until after I'd read it. So that's that one. I'm also going to be unhauling The Wrong Boy I haven't read it. It's not my book. It's actually my auntie's book. So when I say I'm unhauling it, I mean I'm giving it back. A couple of months ago, I was in a massive reading slump. Most of my books were still in storage, and I was just like, I want to start reading again, and I've got nothing to read. So she let me like peruse her shelves, and she just like sent me home with a whole box of books to just help me kickstart again. And I did kickstart again. I just don't particularly want to read this book anymore, and there were a few on this pile that are hers that I'm going to be giving back to her. My Not So Perfect Life by Sophie Kinsella. Total fluff, total joy. I'm just not going to reread it. Peppa by Tristan Hawkins. I love how, let's say, striking the cover is. And this is another one of my auntie's books. I just don't know if I want to read it. It's got that vibe of like gritty, real life relationships that usually end up in like, I don't know, depression, and I don't even know where my thought is going. There's like a train spotting kind of vibe. Like if you've seen the film, it feels like it's got a train spotting air to it, and I thoroughly did not enjoy train spotting, so I'm gonna send that back. The Alphabet Sisters by Monica Mckinnon. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Really enjoyed that. I mean, it went a little bit left field over the last few chapters, and that's probably the reason that I'm unhauling it. If it hadn't have been for that unexpected event, I'd probably actually keep it, because the main bulk of the story, thoroughly enjoyed it. Virals by Kathy Wykes. So here's the thing, like I love Kathy Wykes because I love crime fiction, and she was actually my first ever crime fiction read, like the Temperance Brennan series. Love, love, love. I mean, I know it's not like great literature. I know that the crime's often like quite predictable. I don't care. I love. However, this is part of another series. It's also like a YA version, and I got it at a library sale many moons ago, and I just don't feel inclined to read it. And I have like so many crime fiction books that I'm excited to read that I feel like somebody else who maybe is just getting started with the genre would be the way to go. Oh, hi. Dog says hi. Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. This was another lend from my auntie. I'm just not sure. Like I feel kind of like if I want to experience Pride and Prejudice and Zombies at this point, I'll watch the film. So that's going back. Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. Also one of Auntie's. And I'll be honest, the reason that I'm sending this one back is because it's so big. It is such a big, chunky book, and I mean, how many? Yeah, it's over 1,000 pages long, and I'm just feeling like I'm not sure it's for me. And I didn't realise when I borrowed this, but I realised I actually have a copy of this on my Kindle. So if I ever feel the inclination to read a 1,000-page book about Napoleonic magicians, then I already have access to it. Then we have The Mesmerist by Barbara Ewing. So this one was a tricky one because I actually have read the sequel to this book, The Mesmerist's Daughter, and loved it. I'm pretty sure it was a 5-star. It was at least a 4-star, maybe a 5-star. But at the time, I didn't realise it was a sequel. So I picked this one up at a charity shop but there's just there's something that is holding me back from reading it, and I think maybe it is something to do with the fact that there were so many like mysteries that were tied up in the sequel. It was really suspenseful, it was really good, but it felt very much like it was completing something, and I feel like all of those seeds would have been planted in this book. So I just feel like, given that I know exactly how it's going to turn out, I'm just not going to get the same experience from it. So I'm going to like let it go out into the world, and hopefully someone else who has not already read the sequel will pick this up and adore it, because honestly, so good. The characters were amazing. I love her style of writing, just exquisite, immaculate, so enjoyable. I think I got through it in maybe a day and a half. Love. I have another one of her books on my shelves that I've kept. Just this one, I think I'm not going to read it because I love the sequel so much, and I remember the sequel so much. If it was a little bit hazy, then I would probably be more likely to dive into this, but no, unfortunately. The Miniaturist by Jessie Burton. Read this, really enjoyed it. Didn't love the ending. I thought that it was an odd choice, just because it's quite a not exactly slow burning, although it is kind of slow burning, but it's like this gradual build up, and then the ending goes by in a flash, and it just was a little bit jarring to be like going slow and steady, boom. So I wouldn't reread it, but I did enjoy the experience. And The Japanese Lover by Isabella Yendi. This woman could write a shopping list on the back of an envelope and I would want to read it. She's so good. And what I really love is that she doesn't have like a specific time period that she always resorts to. She typically writes, she writes a lot of historical fiction. She does do some more contemporary stuff as well, but the bulk of the books that I've read by her have been historical fiction, but they've been like from different time periods throughout history and different places around the world. And I really love that, because it's like she's not just writing the same with like this sort of like the same historical events or the same vibe or the same community, but with slightly different characters, which I think a lot of historical fiction authors that I've come across tend to do. Not that that's a bad thing, that people have their comfort zones, but I quite like that she has such a variety. So this one is it's really good, but it's not one of the ones that I would reread. So I want to put that out into the world, because I want more people reading this woman's work. And like, there were books by her on my shelves that I will probably ask to be buried with them. Like, one in particular is coming to mind. Like, I love it with such depth and such strength, and I will reread it many a time. This one I really enjoyed. I think I gave it a 4-star, but I probably won't reread it. And if I decide I want to, I'll just buy it again. I'm cool with doing that with her books. So this is about this kind of star-crossed lover vibe set in the 1940s, between this woman who has been like taken in by wealthy, so she's a Jewish woman, she's been taken in by wealthy relatives in America, while like all kinds of stuff is going on in Europe, as I'm sure you're aware of, and she sort of falls for the son of the Japanese gardener, and like he falls for her back, but they're like it's very like youthful, tender, like star-crossed lover kind of thing. But then obviously, like, as the war kicks in, things start going crazy in America too. We have the internment camps, and like all of this stuff happens, and it just like chronicles this like epic story between this woman and this man, and because they both like they end up marrying other people, and they love the people that they marry, and there's like all of these stories that with the two of them, and it's just like it's beautifully crafted. All of the characters you are just so invested in. Yes. The Bone Setter's Daughter by Amy Tan. I was umming and ahhing about this one because I've read books by her before that I've thoroughly enjoyed. The Kitchen God's Wife is the one that's coming to mind. And I haven't read this. I know I haven't. I've double checked my Goodreads. I really haven't read it. But as I was sorting through my books, I just like sort of opened it at random pages. And the bits that like I was reading, I was like, this feels so familiar. This feels like I've read it before. And so I don't know if it's just very similar to either her other book or books that I've read by other authors. But there's just something about it that is very, very familiar. And so I'm just thinking I'm probably not going to like pick it up and be like really sucked in and dazzled. So that's getting put out into the world. Then we have Wildflower by Drew Barrymore. Really enjoyed it. Really good read. I don't typically reread memoirs. I don't think I've ever actually reread a memoir, so happy to send that off to somebody else who will enjoy it. But it's really nicely written, some really fun stories in there, really relatable. Same with Where Am I Now by Maura Wilson. So this is, I'm sure you can tell, the little girl there is Matilda. So what I really loved about this is she is chronicling more of her life like since like after she stopped acting, and it really goes into a lot of the issues that affect people who were in the limelight very, very young. Impeccably written. She's a very gifted writer. I think she writes for a bunch of websites and magazines, and you can tell why. Like, she's such a good storyteller, and it really does raise some important topics that I think people need to be aware of when it comes to how we treat people who are in the public eye, especially women, and especially like children and young women. So highly recommend. I gave this a 5-star. Really loved it, and I'm very torn about letting it go because I did love it so much, but at the same time, will I reread it? Oh, I'm doubting myself now. I'm just going to leave it on the floor in front of me and I'll decide at the end. Then we have Duende by Jason Webster, which was chewed up by Rosalie when she was a tiny puppy. So this is another one that I'm so sure I haven't read it, but then as I was just flipping through the pages, like every single paragraph that I just sort of read when flipping through, I was like, I've read this before, but I really don't think I have. But have I just read something very similar? I know I've read books about the history of flamenco before, and I'm not sure if I'm just confusing it with one of those, or if I actually have read this and just didn't update my Goodreads. But because it feels so familiar, I just think like I'm probably not going to want to dive into it again, or for the first time if I haven't read it before. Then we have Bilgewater, which is another one that I'm returning to my aunt, for no other reason than it's not mine. And then last but not least, we have Witch Child by Celia Reese. I remember when I was 12 or 13, I devoured anything by Celia Reese that I could get my hands on. She was probably my like gateway drug into historical fiction. I particularly loved pirates. I remember my friend coming to stay with us for the summer, and that was one of the books that she bought, and she lent it to me, and I devoured it in like maybe a day, and it was quite chunky. So good. I've like borrowed it from the library multiple times since and reread it. Really, really good. I love a bit of pirate life. Who doesn't love a bit of pirate life? Anyway, I've read this one. It was great. It's obviously intended for somebody a lot younger than me, so I'm gonna put it out there and hope that it teaches somebody else the delights of historical fiction. So those are the ones that are going to be leaving the house. This pile here, undecided, so let's have a little look at those. So first of all, we have The Infinite Plan by Isabella Yendi. This was actually my most recent Allende that I bought. I haven't read it yet, but I'm questioning my motives for buying it. Did I buy it just because she wrote it and I'm low-key obsessed with her? Or did I buy it because I actually want to read it? By the synopsis alone, I'm like, oh, I don't know. It doesn't sound like one of her most compelling stories, in my opinion. But then, are we judging books by their blurbs? Because sometimes the blurbs are way off. Okay, I haven't even owned this one for a month, so I'm going to keep it for now. Decision made. Then we have Oscar and Lucinda. So all I really know about this is that the author is Australian, and the reason that I know that is because that's literally all it says on the back of the book. Like, there are just 5 different quotes talking about how Australian the author is. Like, I mean, I don't have anything against Australian authors, but that's not necessarily the information that I'm most interested in when I'm trying to like find out what a book is about. And there's no blurb anywhere else either. The only thing that is making me think maybe I want to keep it is the opening line. So it says, if there was a bishop, my mother would have him to tea. That opening line alone gives me such like Agatha Christie, Miss Marple, like small town, quaint village vibes, that it's making me think this is something I'm going to enjoy. But again, I've had it for so long. Oh, okay, I'm gonna see. The Luminous Life of Lily Aphrodite. Like, I love the name of this book. I love the cover of this book. I love the synopsis of this book. And yet, I started reading it a while ago and just didn't continue. You can see my bookmarks still in there. And I don't know, I wasn't gripped. Maybe it was just the time of life when I was reading it. It wasn't what I was feeling. Because I feel it's something that I should love because it ticks all of my boxes. I'm gonna keep. Then we have Cloth Girl by Marilyn Heward Mills. This is one, again, I've had it for so long, and there have been so many times when I've picked it up, I've read the back, I've thought, yes, I want to keep it, and yet I've never read it. It's set in Africa in the 1940s. I don't think I have any other books set in that location in that time period. So from a like diversity of reading experiences point of view, I think I want to read it. But I'm gonna like move it closer to the present moment of reading and try and get to this as soon as I can. Then we have Missy by Chris Hannon, and this is another one. This is another one that I got at the library sale that I mentioned a while back, and every time I've picked it up, I've been like, I don't really want to read that. But then as I was sorting through the books now, I just like the opening line again. It made me think I want to give it a go. So, I expect you have the consolation of religion or the guidance of a philosophy, but when me and the girls get frazzled or blue or rapturous or just awfully so-so, we shin out and buy ourselves some hats. Like, I feel like it's just gonna be light and fun, although the blurb makes it sound very not light and somewhat not fun. Oh, okay, gonna give it a go. Hey kids. Then we have Scarlet by Alexandra Ripley. So this is a continuation novel of Gone with the Wind. And I always say that Gone with the Wind is my favourite book. I'm not 100% sure if that's true anymore, but it is the book that has made me sob deeply. Like, I've never cried at anything as much as I've cried at Gone with the Wind. So that fact that it's inspired such emotion in me made me consider it my favourite. And if you've ever read Gone with the Wind, you know that the ending is like deeply dissatisfactory. So buying this sequel, even though it wasn't by the original author, seemed like a ray of light for me. But then I found another sequel by another author, and I read that one while I was in hospital. So I just like read it basically in one sitting, and that gave me everything that I wanted. Everything that I wanted. It tied up the story. Like, if I could have written it myself, like, that's basically what would have happened. And so now I'm reluctant to read this one because I'm like, is it going to be as fabulous as that one, or is it going to ruin it for me? Hey babe. I might keep it and challenge myself to do a Gone with the Wind reading vlog where I read all 3 books, but they're all pretty chunky, so that might be a job of work. Okay, I'll keep. Then we have The Giver of Stars by Jojo Moyes. Really thoroughly enjoyed this book. I read it really quickly. I enjoy her writing style, very easy to get through. I just don't know that I'd read it again, so I'm happy to release that into the wild. The Silver Linings Playbook by Matthew Quick. Loved this book. I'm pretty sure I gave it a 5 out of 5 when I read it. I'm not sure that I would read it again. I would watch the film again, actually. The film is very close to the book, so I feel like if I wanted to get in touch with those characters again, then I could just watch the film, because I actually do also own it. But the book, highly recommend. And then last but not least, we have Sushi for Beginners by Marion Keyes. So I've read this and I really enjoyed it, but there's something in me saying read it again and then get rid of it, and I don't know why. So I'm just going to listen to my intuition. I'm going to keep it for now, try and prioritize reading it again, and then I will let it go. So we have a few here that are going to be staying. Thankfully they will fit up there, so I'm going to pop them up for now, go make myself a brew, and then take a break. I'm going to take a break and potentially come back and start dressing the shelves either later on this evening or tomorrow, depending on how I feel. So that's all for now, guys. Okay, I'm here to give you a little talk through of the finished article, because I finished putting everything on the shelves in the order I like while binge watching Love Island last night, forgetting to film myself do it. So let's talk about my eccentric librarian system. We're starting with books about books. Then we have classics plus Gone with the Wind sequels. Then we have the non-fiction that is more the type of spiritual development, personal development, a little bit of health stuff thrown in there. We're calling that a genre. Then we have A Plant Baby, followed by crime, thriller, potentially some horror, unclear. But I've grouped those together, and inside of the genres, really, I've just gone for what I think looks aesthetically pleasing. Like, it's not by author, it's not by anything else, it's simply like what I think looks good, because I have to be looking at these shelves and they're kind of a feature in this room. Then we have essay collections and poetries. I mean, this one's not really an essay collection, it's a collection of speeches, but I'm not just having a speech category on its one by its own. So essays and poetry. Then if we move up, we have some more non-fiction. These, like, I would, apart from the psychopath test, they're all like history. And like Three Women I think is more like social history. So we're calling this the history pile. Then we have memoirs or biographies. Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls, we're calling a biography in this instance, because it's kind of like mini biographies. Then we are starting to move into historical fiction, which is where I decided to place my Outlander books, because they're one of those things that defy genre, because they do have some of the more magical elements too with the time travel, but they have to go somewhere, and they're quite like thoroughly researched and historical in nature, so I felt like they belonged on this shelf. Then we have all of my historical fiction, and again, like, no organization system within the genre other than I think it looks nice. I considered putting it in date order, so having it almost like be sequential throughout the ages, but because some of these books span huge chunks of time, like, that just wasn't working for me. So historical fiction, another plant baby, and then we have some retellings. So anything that is a fairy tale retelling, mythology retelling, and then there's one like Shakespeare retelling from Ophelia's point of view right there, but just generally retellings. And then if we move up to the top shelf, we have what I'm bundling together and calling contemporary fiction. So there's a lot of romance in here. There's also just a lot of random modern novels that don't necessarily belong in one of the more clearly defined categories. I also have a stack of Maeve Binchy books here because I love her, like, so much nostalgia attached to these books. I will never ever get rid of them. Before we move on to magic, I'm calling it magic. I struggle with calling it my magical books fantasy, because I feel like actually the only one that you would call fantasy is Children of Blood and Bone. The other ones feel a lot more like magical realism, apart from maybe The House on the Cerulean Sea, which I haven't read yet, so I can't say definitively either way. Then we have Plain Bad Heroines, because it's beautiful and it defies category. The Kelly Armstrong books, which kind of belong in the magical section. So the Women of the Other World series. I have more of these that I've lent out. And then last but not least, these 3 random books that are about home maintenance, so like cleaning, decluttering, feng shui, followed by One Last Plant Baby. And there you have it, my big old bookshelves. Really happy with how these turned out, really happy that I managed to fit everything on, really happy it looks good, just really happy all round. So what I would love for you to do is hit the comments and tell me, of all of the things that I've given you a little tour of on my bookshelves, what do you think I should read next and why? Talk to you soon, hermits.